part as well. Assets equals liabilities and stockholders' equity is considered both the basic accounting equation. It's also the balance sheet equation. And so knowing this formula is important to you. Okay. What we don't have to worry about right now is the statement of cash flow, which chapter 12 is dedicated to the whole thing. But the statement of cash flow simply tells us how cash has changed for the period of time that's listed on the statement, a month, a quarter, or a year, how cash changed over that period of time. That's really all it's telling us. And again, there's a whole chapter in Accounting 102 that's devoted to it. There's also a chapter in managerial accounting that's devoted to it as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and look with you at the annual report. The annual report, basically, these are for publicly traded companies. So that means any corporation in which you and I, as members of the public, can be a stockholder in simply by buying a share of stock. Okay, and you can do that with all the companies you see traded on the stock exchange. Or all public companies. Well, as public companies, they have to report many different decisions out to the public. One of the things that is required is that they have to report their quarterly earnings. So there's a quarterly report that they do. And then at the end of their full accounting year, 12-month period, they have to publish an annual report. Now you can see annual reports from any of the publicly traded companies through the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC.gov, and they have a search engine called EDGAR, E-D-G-A-R. That allows you to search annual reports of publicly traded companies on any of the stock exchanges, New York Stock Exchange, the NASDAQ exchange, or any regional exchanges. So that's something that you'll see, okay? So an annual report will always have some very important pieces of information. And I'm going to rearrange these a little bit because of how they actually show up in an annual report. What you'll see in an annual report first and foremost is management will discuss the financial condition of the company, and it tends to be a pretty long part of the annual report. Sometimes it's 20 or 30 pages, sometimes it's 50 or 60 pages. But they have to explain all the financial and other risks of what's going on in the company. It can get very technical. Some of us like to read parts of this stuff just to see what's going on. So the management discussion and analysis section is one of the biggest parts of the annual report. The next thing you will see is financial statements. They will list their income statement. They call it usually a consolidated statement of income, but it's an income statement. It'll show the profit or loss for the period of time, the year that they're in, and they'll often compare it to the prior year or the prior 2 years. So you actually see either the progression or the decline of the company over that period of time. They'll show you a cash flow statement. They'll show you a balance sheet. There are several other statements that might be included. A lot of times you're looking at a financial statement, there's just numbers and accounts. So oftentimes what you'll see right after the financial statements is notes to the financial statements, which will explain in more detail some of the accounts or some of the numbers on the accounts that are listed. And those can be quite interesting as well, because it'll tell you about the company's debts and the inventory and, you know, some very interesting stuff about the company's financial statements will be listed there. Lastly, there will be an independent accounting firm that looks over the reports and the financial statements to make sure that they're following the rules. Now you can say, well, what do we mean rules? Well, under the United States, companies are required to follow generally accepted accounting principles, what we call GAAP. These are financial accounting rules for the financial statements that are used in the public reports. And so if you are interested in being a certified public accountant, a CPA basically is an expert in financial accounting, the course that you're in right now. And they're the ones who know these rules because they have a huge part in making those rules. And so you have an independent CPA called an auditor who looks at the financial statements of the corporation and verifies to everybody, yeah, they're following the rules. They're following generally accepted accounting principles that we use in the United States. And that's the last part of the annual report that you'll always see. And usually it's in that order. The management discussion will come first, the financial statements, the notes to those statements, and the auditor's reports will all be listed in that regard. Again, your book explains that the company, the MD&A is the management's view on the company's financial abilities. and they must highlight certain trends and events that look either favorable or unfavorable, or certain risks or uncertainties that they see. And so you can see a lot about how the company is run by reading this portion. Okay, this is just a very small excerpt. When in fact they are, like I said, between 20 and 50 pages long in many instances. Financial statements will always have notes to the financial statements that they will provide some clarity and additional detail to the accounts and the numbers that are listed. And the auditor's report, like I said, will make sure that the company is following the rules, what we call generally accepted accounting principles, GAAP. You'll learn more about that in chapter 2. And these rules tell the accountants how to set things up and how to report things. So because an auditor is an independent accountant, they already know the rules, and so they get a chance to review the reports of another company and say, yeah, this is how I would set it up. They're following the rules. And again, this is a little snippet from an auditor's report. And what you're looking for is for them to say, look, we've examined all of the statements and they are in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles. Okay, that's really all they're saying here. And that is basically the financial report.